Numbers 12, we see Miriam and Aaron speaking against Moses because he married a Cushite woman. All we know about this woman is she's from Cush. I didn't think there was anything more I needed to know, but now when something stands out like that and it doesn't make sense to me, I know that I have to dig deeper. I found out that Cush referred to Nubia and the Upper Nile region, which is now Sudan, Ethiopia, and southern Egypt. The Cushites were described historically and biblically as regal and striking in appearance. Isaiah 18:2 talks about swift messengers, people tall and smooth-skinned, a people feared far and wide, an aggressive nation of strange speech. Later in this chapter, Isaiah says that this nation will bring gifts to the Lord in Zion. So there is a covenant relationship between Cush and God. You might know about Ethiopia having the largest and oldest biblical canon that has been used continuously. They also have the oldest continuous Christian tradition and the oldest standing and continuously used churches in the world from the 300s. They actually anchor Christian history, and they are the only African country to resist colonization. So shout out to Cush. Back to what I was saying. The Cushites were instantly recognizable, even from a distance, because of their height and their dark skin. Jeremiah 13:23 says, "Can an Ethiopian change the color of his skin?" So these were people that were known for their skin. The Cushites were also repeatedly shown in scripture close to kings, never enslaved to them. So I believe these things made Miriam feel insecure because even though they were chosen by God, freed from slavery, they were not living like the Cushites. So she objects to the marriage, but her objection is not grounded in scripture. She questions God's authority by saying, "Does the Lord only speak through Moses? Don't he speak to us too?" Miriam is called a prophet, so she had some kind of relationship with God, but in this situation, she was mixing spiritual authority with insecurity and envy. And God responds immediately by giving Miriam white skin. She's exiled from the camp, and after 7 days, Moses intercedes and God restores her. But I want to take a moment to think about what that experience was like for her for that week. Miriam was cut off from community. She had to fend for herself completely. She had no access to the resources from the camp. She would have had to find her own shelter from the elements. She might have even needed to defend herself from strangers or from animals. But most importantly, she was left all alone to reflect on the behavior that invited God's correction. Contrast that with people who experienced a permanent exile due to leprosy. Their isolation cultivated an environment that was basically defined by shame. It is also possible that in some leper communities, the traits that attracted that mark from God became normalized. These communities were likely to foster patterns of manipulation and rationalization, etc. And we see this with the prison system. People go to jail and it often becomes a revolving door because the culture that is cultivated in that space is not always rehabilitated. They're spending all day, every day with other criminals, and that environment requires people to harden themselves in order to survive. Now back to Gehazi, or should I say Gehazi's descendants. They would have been born lepers, so they'd be in this environment from birth. And the behaviors Gehazi modeled, rationalizing greed, turning a blessing into profit, exploiting people's trust, those behaviors can scale and become institutionalized. Miriam's week brought about reflection and correction, but the traits of Gehazi's line, if left unrepented, would have formed a foundation for systemic exploitation. Remember what Prophet Elisha said. Now I want to talk about the so-called curse of Ham. I don't know if you've ever heard about it, but in the past few months, on 2 occasions, a white person tried to shame me by referencing the curse of Ham, not knowing that I'm someone who has studied the curse of Ham like 15 years ago. In Genesis 9, after the flood, Noah gets really drunk and passes out naked. His son Ham sees him and tells his brothers, who walk in backwards and cover him with a blanket to preserve his dignity. When Noah wakes up and finds out what happened, he curses Canaan, Ham's son. Not Ham, but Canaan. Now, back in the day when I researched this, if I remember correctly, I typed in skin color curse in scripture because I like to make sure my search terms are neutral so I can get an unbiased result. And when I tell you, the entire first page of Google results spoke about the curse of Ham, which allegedly turned Ham's skin black and justified the enslavement of Black people. Okay. So I clicked every single link on that page and read it for myself. And it was written in some places almost apologetically, like,
you were enslaved because Ham looked upon his father's nakedness. It's just really a shame, you know?
But one, Ham was never cursed. It was his son, Canaan, that was cursed. And two, nowhere does the text mention black skin. So the curse of Ham is a rationalization made up to justify racism and these hierarchies. And this is obviously something that white people still believe and teach. The fact of the matter is, scripture never curses black skin. The region with the people who have the darkest skin is continuously blessed in scripture. The only skin color curse in the Bible is white skin. It is obvious that white supremacists, confronted with the stories of Miriam and Gehazi's marks, could not bear to be marked. So they projected that curse onto Black and brown people to justify their exploitation. They invented a scriptural justification for slavery, and they've embedded this lie into law and theology and culture. God's correction is precise, but humans rationalize God's correction to create the very systems of oppression we still confront today. In part 3, we're going to trace Gehazi's possible trajectory into Europe, showing how the traits marked by the lepers' judgment evolved into colonial systems and global exploitation.